So you want to try the no filter beta tank. It can be a pretty cool and rewarding process. I'm going to share with you all the things that I do, especially to house a beta fish in a tank without a filter. The first thing that you're going to want to do is pick the tank. I recommend you start anywhere from 5 up to 20 gallons, but try and keep it in that range. You don't want to go any smaller than 5 gallons because then you're running into it being just a super tight environment. We're of course going to be wanting to put a lot of plants in here. We'll talk about that later. Once you start getting over 20 gallons, you're running into a situation where you're going to have to stuff that thing with so much stuff to keep that beta feeling nice and comfortable. They don't like big open spaces and being alone in a huge tank. There's lots of tank choices out there, guys. I mean, just go through and do your research. I recommend, of course, using some kind of a rimless tank because I think they just look cooler and they give you kind of more stylistic options when it comes to scaping the thing, if that's what you're into. But it's hard to make a wrong decision here. As long as it's not smaller than 5 gallons, in my opinion, I think that is a good range to start in. So once you have your tank, the next thing you need to consider is the plants. I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but we do want to pack this thing with as many plants as possible. And we're talking live plants, not fake ones. This is of course even more important because we're talking about not using a filter. So we need something in there to help absorb the nitrogen, the heavy metals that might be in the water, things of that nature. And because we're going to be using live plants, chances are you're going to want to be getting some substrate in there. So you can use sand, you can use gravel, you can use aqua soil, or the fancy substrates that are meant for helping plants to grow. It's totally up to you. I don't think one is necessarily that much better than the other. Obviously, if you're going to be putting a lot of stem plants into your tank, then having a nutrient-rich substrate like an aqua soil or something like that is probably going to help you out. But if it's going to end up costing a little bit too much money, you're on a budget, then just find some sand and go for it. I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker for you. Let's talk a little bit more about plants though, since we've identified that as something that's super important. Now, when it comes to aquarium plants, there's a million of them, and if you're brand new, it can be kind of overwhelming as to what plants are going to work best for you. I'm going to make this super simple list for you guys, and that way you have a good starting point. So all of these are easy plants to grow. There shouldn't be any problems. You're not going to have to need anything extra like fertilization or CO2. These are just all really good plants that are going to look good in your scape, and most of them are going to be active growers, so they're always going to be changing and getting bigger, and that's also going to help to reduce the amount of waste that's being produced in your aquarium by your beta fish. The last plant that I want to talk about that I think should be in everybody's no filter beta fish tank is a floating plant like Sylvinia or duckweed. Having a lot of floating plants is going to do two things. One, it's going to help to even more so pull nutrients out of the water. These plants are obviously heavy water column feeders. They're going to be pulling out that ammonia, they're going to be pulling out that nitrate, and all kinds of other things that you don't want to have build up in your tank. I think this is almost 100% necessary if you're going to do a beta fish with no filter, or any fish in a tank with no filter. We've already seen this tank a couple times in this video, but this is my no filter beta tank. It's a 6-gallon water box, little rimless tank, and you can see we have a lot of floating plants in here. We have a mix of Sylvinia and duckweed. If I could go back in time, I would not have duckweed in here and just have the Sylvinia, just because duckweed is super annoying, but they both do the same thing and it works out perfectly. So I have a little bit of space in here. Every once in a while I have to go in and cup some of it out just so I have a little window to feed this guy, but it really does the trick for me in here, and I think it is the main driver of why I don't ever detect nitrate or anything harmful in my water. Another thing that you should probably consider on your beta tank just in general is not having the water level all the way up at the top of the aquarium. Beta fish are jumpers. Some of them, it seems to be like a personality trait. Some of them are just never going to jump. You're never going to have problems. Other ones are just really prone to jumping. So having that water level down a little bit lower, like give it 1.5 inches, 2 inches, that's just going to help prevent the fish from actually making it out of the tank if it decides to jump. And that paired with the floating plants is actually like double security. So I just think that the fish is a lot less likely to try and jump if it sees a bunch of stuff above it while it's cruising around thinking about jumping. If by chance you watch this whole video and you're still not convinced about trying a no filter tank, I recommend a few different filters for a smaller beta fish tank, or just a smaller fish tank in general. This one here is a little mini canister filter option. So this is the Awaza Filto Smart 60. I pulled this off of one of the tanks that I have up on the shelf, and it works pretty good. There's obviously a million other options as far as hang-on back filters go. So this is a little Dymax. You got Aizu, some of the other cheaper brands. Those filters, despite being cheap, work really good. Actually, the Dymax isn't a cheap one. The Aizu is, but I think you know what I mean. And as always, guys, if you're starting out a brand new tank, regardless of it having a filter or not, I highly recommend you put in some beneficial bacteria. So we got some Fritz Turbo Start. That's going to help to get the beneficial bacteria cycle going. Just because you don't have a filter doesn't mean that you still don't need to promote the nitrogen cycle. It's not 100% going to be on the plants. So put some good bacteria in there. They're going to populate all over the surfaces in this thing and handle that nitrogen. While this tank is pristine from a water composition standpoint, to use fancy words, it's not pristine from a visual perspective. So if you look around here, this is one of the tanks that I just haven't spent a lot of time with the upkeep and the maintenance on. So you're going to notice a lot of mulm and old plant material down here. And that's not necessarily a sign of an unhealthy environment, obviously. Our fish is doing great, and this tank, for better or worse, has looked like this for a super long time. My Java Fern is not doing too hot. A lot of the leaves have been dying off over the course of many, many months. We have some other pots in here. Just kind of ended up using it as a holding tank. Obviously, low maintenance, haven't really done much to it. Something you might be wondering is, do you need to do more water changes if your tank doesn't have a filter? The answer to that is no for this particular tank. So when I do come in here and do, like, I don't know, maybe a 25 or 50% water change, I never really change the water more than about right here, just because it's tough to fill, having this shelf top above there. I will come down and suck up all or most of the plant material and debris down here, and depending what I have on hand, if I have, you know, more Java Fern or anything laying around that I want to put in here, I'll go ahead and put it in. So that's pretty much it, guys. I hope this helped you if you're thinking about doing a beta fish tank with no filter. It was kind of inspired by a talk that I had on a live stream with Lucas Bretz over the weekend at Aquashella. He was talking about no filter tanks, and we were kind of having a dialogue, so that's what prompted this video. And if you remember, if you saw the last video, we left before the trip, we did some maintenance here on the Avatar tank. We were having some problems with algae, and we went through the steps on how to get rid of that, or at least work on it and have a maintenance strategy to deal with that. But the main take home was, like, just be patient, because nothing is perpetual and forever. Sometimes you just got to be patient, and lo and behold, we haven't done anything to this tank besides just top it off when we got back. So fast forward a week of just being patient, and the tank is looking pretty good. So there you go. That's probably going to wrap up this video, guys. I think it should be a Saturday, maybe it's a Sunday, depending, I'm not sure, but it is the weekend, so we're going to do a holographic axolotl with every order that you place on the sticker store. This weekend we have some new fish. We got the cherry barb. That probably wasn't in focus. We also have the Rosaline shark. You want to focus on that? There you go. And then we have some more axolotls, of course. So we got the 8-bit dude right there, and then we have a couple other axolotls. So go check out the sticker store if you want to support the channel. Sorry for making this outro so long, but if you were at Aquashella or you were paying attention to what was going on, you know that I kind of have a new thing going on. So if you know, you know. If you don't know, we'll talk about it eventually on this channel. But yeah, some cool changes are happening for me right now. I'm really excited, and I'm never gonna stop making YouTube videos. Never ever. We'll try and get them a little bit more frequent for you. I know it's been rough the past handful of months here, but we'll figure it out, guys. I'm doing my thing. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching this super long outro, and we'll see you in the next one.